Welcome to Scriptural Science, a presentation of Truth and Life Institute, Boston, Massachusetts, and Oba, Nigeria. The following is a subsection of the book, Save Yourself from Your Wealth and the Lure of Wealth, written and published by Ifeanyi Chukwujima, scriptural scientist and a servant of God, and by Dr. Ifeanyi Chukwujima, Doctor of Pharmacy. This subsection's ID is Save Yourself 110. Using your wealth to save yourself is the least you can do for yourself. The Bible commands us to use our wealth to save ourselves, adding that whatever anyone puts their wealth into, their heart will be. Luke 6:21. Therefore, no one should deceive themselves by spending their wealth on one thing and claiming that they care about another thing they keep their wealth away from. Whatever you spend your wealth on is where your heart is. Matthew 6 verse 21, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. 20, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. 23, but if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? 24, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Matthew 6 verses 19 to 24 NIV. Giving is love. When you love, you give. John 3:16. 1 John 4 verse 9. Whoever we give our time, our money, and our materials and services to is the one we love. And whoever spends their wealth on you is deserving of your respect. Whoever encourages disobedience of God so they can receive what God had designed for someone else draws God's wrath on themselves for robbing the person they deny their entitlement from God. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act. Proverbs 3 verse 27 NIV. God had created every wife to be under the authority of her husband, who is her king. Genesis 3 verse 16, Ephesians 5 verses 22 to 24, 1 Peter 3 verses 1 to 6, etc., and who she was commanded to listen to in all things. See the following passage of the Bible. Listen, daughter, and pay careful attention. Forget your people and your father's house. 11. Let the king be enthralled by your beauty. Honor him, for he is your Lord. 12. The city of Tyre will come with a gift. People of wealth will seek your favor. 13. All glorious is the princess within her chamber. Her gown is interwoven with gold. 14. In embroidered garments she is led to the king. Her virgin companions follow her, those brought to be with her. 15. Led in with joy and gladness, they enter the palace of the king. 16. Your sons will take the place of your fathers. You will make them princes throughout the land. 17. I will perpetuate your memory through all generations. Therefore the nations will praise you forever and ever. Psalm 45 verses 10 to 17 NIV. God had created the man to work the land, Genesis 2 verse 15, and make something to take care of his family and those who help him in his work. So, marriage is a business enterprise among other things. That is why the wife is a helper that is suitable for her husband, assisting her husband in all things, Proverbs 31 verses 10 to 31, to make their life and marriage profitable and fruitful. When God first created human beings, resources were plentiful. People went wherever they wanted and started their businesses there, and made enough to take care of their families. But as time progressed and people increased in number and became more territorial, every patch of land everywhere on the earth belongs to someone who now fiercely guards it as part of their property. So, we no longer have the freedom to go wherever we want and start a business there. We must pay our way through things and enter into agreements with others to allow us to use their property. Yet, God had not diluted his law on marriage. Every wife remains a helper suitable for her husband and must obey her husband in all things, because God had created marriage to save human. Beings from the sins, the devil coerced them into sinning as the devil entices them away from God. Remember this, keep it in mind, take it to heart, you rebels. 9. Remember the former things, those of long ago. I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. 10. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. Isaiah 46 verses 8 to 10 NIV. So, no matter how much wealth a woman brings into her marriage, she is still under the authority of her husband and must continue to obey her husband in all things. Genesis 3 verse 16, Ephesians 5:22-24, etc. We must always keep in mind that once a man and a woman join their hands in marriage, the woman's wealth becomes the wealth of her husband as well, and vice versa. The following are God's commands on inheritance, tribal lands, that God gave to Moses after 5 daughters of a deceased Israelite man appealed to Moses to give them their father's inheritance, so their father's name would not be lost among his relatives. What Zelophehad's daughters are saying is right. You must certainly give them property as an inheritance among their father's relatives and give their father's inheritance to them. Numbers 27:7 NIV. Say to the Israelites, if a man dies and leaves no son, give his inheritance to his daughter. Numbers 27:8 NIV. If he has no daughter, give his inheritance to his brothers. Numbers 27:9 NIV. If he has no brothers, give his inheritance to his father's brothers. Numbers 27:10 NIV. If his father had no brothers, give his inheritance to the nearest relative in his clan, that he may possess it. This is to have the force of law for the Israelites, as the Lord commanded Moses. Numbers 27:11 NIV. If there is any inheritance a woman from a wealthy family believes should not be part of her marriage, and her soon-to-be husband consents to it, she should let her father's family manage that inheritance of hers separately from whatever she takes with her to her marriage and whatever she produces while in her marriage. But whatever she left with her father's household at her marriage must never interfere in the life she shares with her husband. This agreement must be clear to her and her husband before they finalize their marriage, because wealth is the root of evil, 1 Timothy 6 verse 10, and so must be kept away from ruining marriages and other relationships. A father no longer has any say as to how whatever wealth he gave to her married daughter is managed and dispersed. The man he gave his daughter to in marriage now manages that wealth as part of his and his wife's wealth generation efforts. Any other way leads to conflicts that hamper marriage and God's plan for salvation through marriage, and potentially leads to the dissolution of whatever marriage is involved. Worse still, the bride's father risks a judgment from God for wrongful interference in another man's marriage, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Matthew 19 verse 6 NIV. Whatever wealth the father of the bride gives to his daughter belongs to his daughter and her husband. Marriage is a divine contract that allows a man and his wife to put their resources together for the betterment of their future without fear, and so must not be encumbered by other financial arrangements that take away from the wife's or the husband's full concentration on making their marriage save them and their immediate household. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Genesis 2 verse 24 NIV. Here in the concerns of the family heads from the tribe of Manasseh, the distasteful disruptions wealth in marriage could bring to communities. The family heads of the clan of Gilead, son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, who were from the clans of the descendants of Joseph, came and spoke before Moses and the leaders, the heads of the Israelite families. 2. They said, when the Lord commanded my Lord to give the land as an inheritance to the Israelites by lot, he ordered you to give the inheritance of our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. 3. Now suppose they marry men from other Israelite tribes, then their inheritance will be taken from our ancestral inheritance and added to that of the tribe they marry into. And so part of the inheritance allotted to us will be taken away. For when the year of Jubilee for the Israelites comes, their inheritance will be added to that of the tribe into which they marry, and their property will be taken from the tribal inheritance of our ancestors. 5 Then at the Lord's command Moses gave this order to the Israelites. What the tribe of the descendants of Joseph is saying is right. 6 This is what the Lord commands for Zelophehad's daughters. They may marry anyone they please as long as they marry within their father's tribal clan. 7 No inheritance in Israel is to pass from one tribe to another, for every Israelite shall keep the tribal inheritance of their ancestors. 8 Every daughter who inherits land in any Israelite tribe must marry someone in her father's tribal clan, so that every Israelite will possess the inheritance of their ancestors. 9 No inheritance may pass from one tribe to another, for each Israelite tribe is to keep the land it inherits. 10 So Zelophehad's daughters did as the Lord commanded Moses. 11 Zelophehad's daughters, Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah, married their cousins on their father's side. 12 They married within the clans of the descendants of Manasseh son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in their father's tribe and clan. 13 These are the commands and regulations the Lord gave through Moses to the Israelites on the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. Numbers 36:1-13 NIV. God made this special provision to ensure that tribal inheritance given to daughters of a deceased member of a tribe in Israel does not pass from the deceased man's tribe to the tribes the daughters marry into. Yet in this provision, God made sure he did not affect his law of marriage, which warrants that whatever wealth a woman brings into her marriage becomes her husband's and stays with her husband's kinsmen. Zelophehad's daughters married their cousins from their father's side, Numbers 36:11, to keep the tribal inheritance of their father within their father's clan, which is also their husband's clan. The men Zelophehad's daughters married ended up with the women's dead father's tribal inheritance, which eventually passed on to their sons with Zelophehad's daughters. God has given human beings laws that guide everything we do. The law that accords property rights to people on their wealth dictates that applicable boundaries be respected when it comes to other people's wealth. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? Matthew 20:15 NIV. Anyone can set up a trust or a business that may continue to run profitably even after he or she is long dead, if they could put enough safeguards around the business to keep others from sucking life out of it and liquidating it. Trusts are legal arrangements that protect assets and direct their use and disposition in accordance with their owner's intentions. And any husband who agrees to associate with his father-in-law's such venture must respect the business they are getting involved in. A man who marries into a family with such a setup must dutifully serve his wife's father's interests pertaining to the business. But he is not serving his wife, who had become his ward, Ephesians 5 verses 23 and 29, 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3, and must obey him in all things, Ephesians 5 verses 22 and 24, etc. Our problem is that we continuously blur the line for selfish gains. Outside a man's father-in-law's business, the man is the head of the life he shares with the father-in-law's daughter he is married to, even if his wife is his boss at her father's business in which he works, because their marriage supersedes whatever they do to make a living and everything else in their lives. God's law of marriage is the law of all of life. To the woman he said, "Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." Genesis 3:16 NIV. And nothing anywhere in the world comes a close second to God's law of marriage. Men marrying women who make as much as they make, or more than they make, is more common in this day of specialized education for males and females in societies across the world. This is a big shift from the traditional marriages that were written about in the Bible, where women tend the household and manage the children while their husbands worked the more physically demanding jobs to make a living for the family. Because of great increases in the wealth of world societies and society's emphasis on the type of education that will help society harness this wealth, people of all societies have walked away from the norms of traditional marriages into a big confusion that has paralyzed marriage the world over. This new economic reality continues to force young men and women to put off marriage and raising families to much later in their lives, so they can acquire what they need to afford the so-called good life the world promises. Opting out of the current trend appears impossible, since the world governments and the firms that support the various consumer trends continue to promise great rewards for whoever subscribes to the trend, and leave behind those who are dragging their feet in support of the trend. And religion has lost its bite, making little noise here and there, but in the end, falling in line with what everyone in society is doing. If a man consents to marrying a woman who is financially better placed than he must remember that wealth accords power and so must be willing to accommodate his wife's occasional frustration for having to take directions from him in the life they both share, which involves money to a large extent. This, however, does not give a license to the wife to disobey her husband. Their marriage simply needs time to adjust to the inequality in their respective financial positions. But every marriage must conform to the law of God, to the woman he said. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Genesis 3 verse 16 NIV. However, if a man's wife gets into the wealth after they had been married, her better financial position has no merit in causing her to fuss about following her husband's instructions as commanded by God. She has no God-given right to start feeling superior to her husband because of the money she made while they are married to each other. The money she makes is at their disposal equally, just as whatever her husband makes is equally at their disposal, for use in solving the problems in their shared life, as directed by the husband. Every well-off woman must remember that her marriage is more important to God than her wealth and philanthropies. James 1 verses 9 to 12 NIV. Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position. 10. But the rich should take pride in their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wild flower. 11. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls, and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away even while they go about their business. 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Luke 12 verses 13 to 48 NIV. Someone in the crowd said to him, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. 14. Jesus replied, Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? 15. Then he said to them, Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. 16. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. 17. He thought to himself, What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. 18. Then he said, This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. 19. And I'll say to myself, You have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. 20. But God said to him, You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? 21. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God. 22. Then Jesus said to his disciples, Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. 23. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. 24. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap, they have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. 25. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? 26. Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? 27. Consider how the wild flowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. 28. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, How much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? 29. And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. 30. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. 31. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. 32. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. 33. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. 34. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. 35. Be dressed ready for service, and keep your lamps burning. 36. Like servants waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet, so that when he comes and knocks, they can immediately open the door for him. 37. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will dress himself too. Serve will have them recline at the table and will come and wait on them. 38. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or toward daybreak. 39. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. 40. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. 41. Peter asked, Lord, are you telling this parable to us or to everyone? 42. The Lord answered, who then is the faithful and wise manager, whom the master puts in charge of his servants to give them their food allowance at the proper time. 43. It will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. 44. Truly I tell you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. 45. But suppose the servant says to himself, my master is taking a long time in coming, and he then begins to beat the other servants, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk. 46. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. 47. The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. 48. But the one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. Every family has the right to give their married daughter only a portion of whatever the family has reserved for her as her inheritance from the family, and keep the rest with the family until whenever the family chooses to finally give it to her. In this judgment there is no partiality. And whatever wealth a father of the bride reserves with him for his married daughter remains his to decide entirely how to manage and disperse, as long as he keeps all responsibilities relating to the management of that wealth away from his daughter and her marriage. Destroying God's order of life so you can keep your wealth in your own name, by denying another man his full opportunity to make and manage his own wealth with his wife as designed by God, Genesis 2 verses 18 and 20, is a sin against the man. If a man chooses to marry your daughter and come into your family to manage your wealth for you, you must understand that he has earned the right to share in your wealth as one of your own children. Hear it from the Bible. A prudent servant will rule over a disgraceful son and will share the inheritance as one of the family. Proverbs 17 verse 2 NIV. If you treat him honorably, through his services to you God will keep your wealth for generations of your children to inherit. But if you become treacherous with a son-in-law that chooses to come into your family to manage your wealth for you, God may give your entire wealth to him or other deserving people. Proverbs 13 verse 22 NV. A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. Genesis 31 verses 4 to 16 NV. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were. 5. He said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before, but the God of my father has been with me. 6. You know that I've worked for your father with all my strength. 7. Yet your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. 8. If he said, the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled young. And if he said, "The streaked ones will be your wages," then all the flocks bore streaked young. 9 So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. 10 In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw that the male goats mating with the flock were streaked, speckled, or spotted. 11 The angel of God said to me in the dream, "Jacob." I answered, "Here I am." 12 And he said, "Look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted, for I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you." 13 I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. 14 Then Rachel and Leah replied, "Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate?" 15 Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. 16 Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. Whatever your situations are in this life, rich or poor, male heirs, female heirs, or no heirs, etc., God has something to do with each of them. Remember that God is using all your situations to test you. Deuteronomy 13 verses 3 to 4, so he can exonerate you from all blames. If you forget that God is using all your situations to test you, you may become crafty and lose not only your wealth, but also eternal life and the rich inheritance God has been saving for you. Matthew 6:19-21 NIV. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. 20 But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. 21 For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Therefore, a wife who brings to her marriage equal or more wealth than her husband brings to the marriage should never let her wealth lead her away from her marriage, because it is through her marriage that God has guaranteed to save her and her family. If she continues in her marriage in faith, love, and holiness with propriety, 1 Timothy 2 verse 15 NIV. Tell the pastor at your church what I said here. If your pastor convinces you otherwise, stay away from that pastor's teaching. You must not place your high earnings above what God has directly commanded you personally throughout the Bible. Save yourself and avoid encumbering your children's lives. We seek material resources to solve our problems, and not to compound our problems and make them impossible for us to get away from. Keep your life simple. Your high position or low position never matters to God. All God seeks from you is your soul. So be sure to not deny him, because there is a huge cost to pay for denying God your soul. He bought you at a cost that is high and dear to him, the life of his only begotten Son, in whose body you live and move and have your being. Acts 17:28, Ephesians 2:10. Here is Deuteronomy 13. If a prophet or one who foretells by dreams appears among you and announces to you a sign or wonder, 2. And if the sign or wonder spoken of takes place, and the prophet says, "Let us follow other gods, gods you have not known, and let us worship them," 3. You must not listen to the words of that prophet or dreamer. The Lord your God is testing you to find out whether you love him with all your heart and with all your soul. For it is the Lord your God you must follow, and him you must revere. Keep his commands and obey him. Serve him and hold fast to him. 5. That prophet or dreamer must be put to death for inciting rebellion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and redeemed you from the land of slavery. That prophet or dreamer tried to turn you from the way the Lord your God commanded you to follow. You must purge the evil from among you. 6. If your very own brother, or your son or daughter, or the wife you love, or your closest friend secretly entices you, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods that neither you nor your ancestors have known," 7 gods of the peoples around you, whether near or far, from one end of the land to the other, 8 Do not yield to them or listen to them. Show them no pity. Do not spare them or shield them. 9 You must certainly put them to death. Your hand must be the first in putting them to death, and then the hands of all the people. 10 Stone them to death. because they tried to turn you away from the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. 11 Then all Israel will hear and be afraid, and no one among you will do such an evil thing again. 12 If you hear it said about one of the towns the Lord your God is giving you to live in, 13 that troublemakers have arisen among you, and have led the people of their town astray, saying, "Let us go and worship other gods, gods you have not known." 14 Then you must inquire, probe, and investigate it thoroughly. And if it is true and it has been proved that this detestable thing has been done among you, 15 You must certainly put to the sword all who live in that town. You must destroy it completely, both its people and its livestock. 16 You are to gather all the plunder of the town into the middle of the public square and completely burn the town and all its plunder as a whole burnt offering to the Lord your God. That town is to remain a ruin forever, never to be rebuilt. 17 And none of the condemned things are to be found in your hands. Then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger, will show you mercy, and will have compassion on you. He will increase your numbers, as he promised on oath to your ancestors. 18 Because you obey the Lord your God by keeping all his commands that I am giving you today, and doing what is right in his eyes. Deuteronomy 13 verses 1 to 18 NIV.